So let's talk about the string drill. Okay, so the string drill. I'm going to hold up the screen here. Hopefully you guys can see this. Instagram, I don't know if you can see that or not. Okay, but this is the product in Canada, but there'll be something similar to this in the US. Okay, what this is poly rope. Okay, and this is reflective, which is kind of fun. So it's diamond braid polypropylene reflective rope. It's 5 by 32 inch by 50 feet. Okay, and you can get, this is nice and convenient. It's 50 feet. When you run it out, it's like 25. It's basically 8 meters away from the cage. Okay, so you can string 2 of these together to get longer, but the angles don't change so significantly. But here's the deal. What we're trying to do, okay, a lost art in lacrosse, in my opinion, is lacrosse goalies don't spend enough time understanding where they are in relationship between the ball and the cage. Because most coaches shoot on their goalies from top center, right? And a lot of you this year, I saw it, like you sent your goalies off to camps or clinics or showcases or whiz bang events with cool t-shirts, and they're just getting shot on from 15 yards by some college kid or some really good high school kid. And what that teaches your goalie is like the biggest move they have to make, right? To cover the most space. The problem is that that's like only one small part of the game of lacrosse. 90% of the time, your goalie is getting shot on by some sort of angle. And that changes how far your goalie needs to move in front of the ball. Okay. So what do we do? What we're doing with the string drill is, so what is it? We're basically taking this type of rope, and I recommend going at least this thick, just for usability issues, right? So you can go like really thin, but what you're going to do is you're going to take a carabiner, okay? You take a carabiner, and you're going to tie one end of it, right, to the post. You're going to basically take another Sweet Home. I see you. Thank you. You're gonna run that out to a shooter stick, and what you can do is you can actually take another carabiner, and you're gonna clip that to the top of the stick, I'll go into a little more detail here. So at this point, you're not actually shooting the ball; you're just helping the goalie understand the angles. All right, so that line's gonna go from one post out to the stick of the person shooting, and then back to the other post. Now, what you can do is you can do them hip high on either side. You can do them from the top corners. You can do them from the low corners. You can leave it, you can not connect it to a stick and just leave it on the ground and then stake it and have a coach shoot from that angle. Okay, shoot from that angle. And what the goalie is understanding is they're going to see these lines on the ground. Okay, and so for my Lacrosse Goalie University members, I've got a big module where, like, how to coach a young new lacrosse goalie, and I show how this works in there, and so the idea is that what most goalies, unfortunately, what they're taught is they're just taught these massive moves to make saves because the coach is directly out front. So we don't want that, because if all I'm teaching my goalie is a response where they have to make this big massive move, well, then the overall understanding of where they are in space. So, for example, let's say your goalie is in the middle of the cage and there's a shooter top center, and the shooter is shooting the ball off stick high, and they've got to make this big, your goalie's got to make this big dynamic move to get the stick across to make that save. Now you're wiring in this big dynamic move. Now you go over to a tighter angle shot. Like, let's say, it's a player coming around the goal line, from back right to above the goal line, and they throw a little fake and they go off stick high. Well, your goalie is like going to make this massive move again. The problem is that within that move, there's an acceleration phase where the goalie is moving their stick explosively to get over there, but there's also a deceleration phase. Okay, because otherwise the goalie's like arm would fly out of their socket, right? So we have this in every move, in every athlete, every sport, with the exception of, let's say, like even like in a vertical jump, there's a bit of deceleration that happens to protect joints. Okay, so it's a very technical thing. I'm not going to go too deep in it, but the bottom line is this: is that if your goalie doesn't have an understanding of like, okay, wait, well, if I'm getting shot on from like side right, I don't have to move so far to make this save. But the only way that goalie really understands what that means, and what I mean by that is the hard edge, right? So every goalie goes like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Like, yeah, I don't have to move that far. Yeah, but do you know exactly how far you need to go? By running the strings out to the shooter, the goalie can see that if they move out towards the shooter, they have less to move. They take up more space in the cage. If they stand way back, they've got more to move, right? If they're too far right, too far left, they can understand like, okay, if I'm righty goalie on this pipe, I need to move this far. Well, wait, but if I offset my feet a little bit, then I don't have to move so far. Like now your goalie can process all this stuff where without it, they have no idea. If you ask them like, hey, do you have to move so far on those types of shots, then shots from out front, they'll tell you no. But the truth is they don't know they don't know where the hard edge of no is. So the string drill is fascinating. And what's cool is that you can take the strings. And so when you run that triangle out, like, so let's say I run the lines from the post out to the shooter stick, back to the other post. Now I can't actually shoot with, you could, but it gets kind of weird. But the idea is that the shooter is basically pulling that triangle created by the strings tight, okay? Pulling it tight. What you can do is you can actually then make it shorter. So a 50-yard string, that's roughly going to take you out to about 8 yards, right? 8 yards. And so a shooter can be moving right, left, whatever. So if you put two of those together, you're going to get to 16 yards, right? But what you can do is you can actually tie a little bit of a loop. You just have to shorten the string on one of the posts. Okay. I wish I had a diagram for you, but whatever. You guys are all smart people and nobody pays me enough to do this. So what ends up happening is that the goalie can actually see what's happening here. Okay. Now I'm not sure who this is. So I run the rope through Paul, I see you. So I run the Andy Levison curling. No. Stephanie Phipps. Okay. So Paul writes, I run the rope through a ring and clip it to a waist belt and can move in an arc to shoot. So Paul, that works. But one of the mistakes that I see with goalies is they line up on a shooter, but in certain situations where the head of the stick releases the ball, changes angles, right? So while I like your idea, I want to make sure that your goalies aren't just focused on being lined up on the body and at least having an understanding of how those angles change. Because if I shoot a sidearm shot right-handed and then I could turn and around and take a sidearm shot left-handed, well, that's a 6-foot swing. Now, if I'm out at 15 yards, not that big of a deal. Okay. But if I'm a righty goalie and you're a righty shooter, that changes the angle to my off-stick side. If I'm a lefty goalie and you're a righty shooter, changes the angle, right? So if you're a lefty shooter and a righty goalie, it changes the angles. And if you're close, it can really change things. Okay. So another way I like to use the string as well is I like to run the string from the stick to the top of the crossbar, right? So the top of the crossbar. What ends up happening there is the goalie can see just how far they need to cover and how dangerous it is if they come out in certain situations, right? What I find with a lot of goalies, especially my girls, is that when they come out at a shooter, even though they're giving up space above the net, shooters start to miss, okay? Because for goalies, we have to respect angles, but one thing that a lot of shooters don't understand, especially in the high school level, is they don't understand their angles. They don't understand what's possible with their stick and the ball in their stick from where they're shooting from. Okay. So I love this. Mary Horowitz, this is brilliant. It's so practical. Thank you. It's not, and listen, I'm not taking credit for this at all, but the idea is that I don't see this used nearly enough. Okay. Mike Porach, honor the stick position, not the shooter's body. Yes. Sweet home goalie. I appreciate that. Mary writes, this is brilliant. It's so practical. We've done string drills for angles before, but not connected to a shooter. I think this will help our 2030 really connect the dots between angles and shooter position. Yes, totally. And Mary, especially Like, who should do this? Like, I've given this to collegiate, like Division I collegiate goalies. And I'm like, you don't, like, when I watch film of them, I go, like, you don't know what your angles are. Like, you don't. And fundamentally, this also keeps goalies from moving out away from the crease, because when they don't have the strings. When they have the strings, now they start to really understand, like, oh, yeah, get it. If I come out to the top of the crease here, I've got very little to move. The shooter has very little to hit. And so either I'm going to make the save, or they're going to hit me, or they're going to miss, or they're not going to shoot at all, right? That's a big deal, okay? Everybody thinks that it's just like a shooter and a goalie has to make a save. That's not true. That shooter can miss the cage. That shooter can hit the goalie. That shooter can decide not to shoot, or that shooter may try to pass it to somebody and the pass doesn't connect. Great. All because your goalie understood their angles, right? So this isn't just about a ball stopping thing. This is a change the game thing, okay? And we're changing the game one goalie at a time. Amen. Done with some of this. Okay. Paul writes, great, thanks. So Paul, I totally get what you're doing, and I love it, and it's better than nothing. But just I think if you add that, the other thing you can do too is you can go like, okay, we're going to work on shots from 45 degrees, right? And we're going to stake that. We're going to stake those in the ground. Like, I'm going to put a stake out there, bring the triangle out, make it nice and tight. Boom. And I'm going to shoot, and I'm going to release the head of my stick over where that stake is, right? That way, a goalie, when you do that, like if you do it for like 20 shots like that, your goalie's really going to feel, especially if you shoot sidearm, your goalie's really going to feel like, oh, wait, his body is here and the head of the stick is there. All right. So that's really, really good stuff. Okay. So was that helpful? If that was helpful, hit the like button. Do it very on Instagram. Give me those little heart things. I love when the little hearts like bubble up on the right side of my screen. That makes me very happy inside. And I'm going way long, and I've got to get going for my next Facebook Live. If you guys want to join in on that later, that'd be good. So really appreciate it. So if you got any questions on that, you can always email me, coachedwards@lacrossegoalietips.com. This is a very underrated, underutilized drill. And I know that if you take some time to actually add it to your day, all right, and if you want to go totally badass and ballsy on this, you get 3 of those strings. You set up 3 triangles to make it easy on you. 1 top center, 1 at like a 45-degree angle to the right, 1 at a 45 to the left, or 30 or 27.5 for all you engineers out there. But whatever. That'll help your goalie understand where those angles are. Okay. It also helps out with positioning, especially as players move. And you can leave those lines. You can run a shooting drill with a team and have those lines on the field, especially if they're just out to like about 8 yards or so, and just shoot from there. Right. And just have your team do your drills and leave them on the ground, and your goalie will start getting those reference points. Okay. You can get different colors. They come in yellow, pink, and orange. You probably get special order of them off of like Alibaba or some bullshit. Pardon me. Anyway, I'm moving on. All right. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com and check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.